Hi, Dylan. I wanted to leave you some feedback on your week one writing assignment. First off, your heading over here looks pretty good, professional, but you are missing your header, which goes into the upper right hand corner, which is your last name and your page number, and that should appear on each page of your draft. Right? There's only one page in this assignment, and that's okay. But should there be more than one, you'd want to include that. If you don't know how to create a header, remember there is an MLA tutorial in the resources folder, and you can read about how to create a header. So I think there are some good ideas presented in this submission, but there are some things that I want to talk to you about. So first off, when you write a summary, your purpose is to be objective in tone, meaning that you are just supposed to capture what the author says in the essay, right? The main idea as succinctly as possible. And you do your best to leave out your own opinion on it. I think that your opening sentences handle that pretty well, but in this area, you start pivoting into the parts of the text that you don't understand. You wouldn't want to include those in a summary, right? You'd want those in another paragraph. So I would rethink your formatting here in terms of paragraphing. Let's talk about some other things. You've set up your signal phrase here, so good job. But remember that you need to format your title. So short stories in MLA need to be inside quotation marks. You're being a little informal here, so I would take out these prison guards or make this more specific, right? So describing the setting or stating the setting, right? Prison guards in a jail in Burma would work much better here. You're just being too informal. Note, hopefully you can see that Microsoft is pointing out, actually this was how it was originally. I was already playing around with your text. Microsoft is pointing out some errors that you have here. So Microsoft is giving you hints. So one of the things that I'm seeing is it looks like this submission wasn't edited as well as it could be. And remember that you want to edit your submissions before you turn them in. So one issue that you have here is a homophone error. You are using this form of the word to, and really we have three forms of the word to, and each of these forms have different meanings. TWO refers to a number, TO refers to location, and if I say TOO, what I'm really saying here is, oops, if I can spell it, what I'm really saying here is also, right? Like, I want to go too, right? That means include me too. I want to come as well. But to refers to location. So if you see here, Microsoft has flagged your use of to here because you don't mean also, you're talking about location. So you want to pay attention to where Microsoft has told you that you have made errors, because those should be corrected. And if you turn in a submission that's been flagged by Microsoft, it's going to be pretty clear to your reader that you aren't editing. And note that Microsoft doesn't flag all your errors because this one is incorrectly used too. So it's a good idea to get feedback and learn those rules and learn to apply them. Note that you're also being flagged here, and this is because you are using possession, but you're doing so incorrectly. Meaning that when we want to talk about ownership, here you say Orwell's point, right? Whose point is it? It's Orwell's. We use an apostrophe to show that we are talking about possession. We are talking about ownership. It's Orwell's point, not mine, not yours, Orwell's. But if we don't include that apostrophe, what happens? This looks like you mean more than one Orwell. There's not more than one Orwell, right? It's not plural. There's only one. But the reader's going to read it as such, so that's why it's an error. So that's another thing that you need to edit for. I think that you're right here. I think that you got the main idea. I think that you're spot on. So good work in being able to identify the main idea very clearly and very succinctly. In terms of you asking questions, this section of your response, you're really kind of treating this like a journal entry, and that's not what this assignment is asking you to do. This assignment instead is asking you to identify the claims that, or let me say it this way, I'm sorry. This is asking you to identify the main moments in the text that led you to think this main idea is the main idea. So how did you figure out that this is what Orwell means in the text? Does that difference make sense? So if you have questions about the text, those are things that I think that you can try to work out in a journal entry that's separate from this. You can ask those questions in class, or you can ask me privately. But they're not necessarily things that you want to include in the paper. Because this is coming across, like I said, like a journal entry and not an entry that's identifying how the author suggests those claims to you. But I will go ahead and talk to you about this stuff. I don't know this moment in the text that you're talking about here. So when we come back to class, if you want to bring the essay to me and show me this moment in the text, I will do my best to help you figure that out. But I honestly don't know what you're talking about here. In terms of the dog, here's what Orwell's doing. He is using the dog to essentially shame the guards, right? So you point out in this submission that the guards they feel really uncomfortable with what they're doing, right? With the fact that their job is to, execute people. And we know that based on the way that they're behaving it. They never say so, right? The only person whose head we're inside of is the narrator. And he tells us exactly how he feels, although he never says it out loud. But still, they go along with it anyway. The only reason why we know that is because of their behavior and what Orwell describes to us. So think about what happens in that moment when the dog approaches the hangman. He's being held by the guards. They're walking him to the gallows. And think about how kind of cold they're being in that moment. They are very uncomfortable, but they're kind of like steeling themselves against their emotion. But the dog runs up, starts barking, jumping on all of them, particularly the hangman. And think about what dogs are trying to do in that moment. They're like, "Yay, humans! I'm gonna get a treat. You're gonna play with me. Let's have a good time." So think about why Orwell would do that. The dog doesn't see any difference between the hangman and the guards. He's just like, human equals good, right? Human equals treat, or human equals I get to play and have fun. And what Orwell's doing with the dog forces the guards to step away from that steeliness. And they again have to deal with how they really feel about the situation, right? Because the dog is kind of calling them out on how cruel they're being. The dog sees no difference between them, but there's this clear distinction between the two of them and in the way that they're behaving. So that's the purpose of the dog. So I want to point another thing out to you. If you don't understand something, I mentioned before that's something that you want to figure out outside of the text if the assignment is asking you to not create a journal entry. Another way that you could handle that is, instead of saying, "I don't get this," try to figure it out on the page, meaning it could mean this. And if it means this, how does that support the overarching idea of the text? Or how does that contradict it? Does that make sense? Does that difference make sense? So writing at times can be a form of you trying to figure out what things mean, but you want to include that exploration on the page, not simply say, "I don't get it." If you don't get it, if you don't understand something in the text, like I said before, if you don't explore it, that's something that you want to try to figure out on your own before the assignment, or go to another person in class, or ask that question in class. So really, as a whole, you have some good ideas here, but this really just needs another round of editing for clarity.